Hello, guys, and welcome to this fantastic session where I'm going to be talking about English Literature 2020 Mains Paper 1 analysis. This is Harshit Bhardwaj. I teach English Literature optional to UPSC aspirants, and the 2020 paper happened on the 17th of January 2020. And if you're wondering who I am, I have done master's level education from University of Liverpool. I'm an author of HarperCollins book A to B, How to Move from Adversities to Breakthroughs. I'm a co-founder of a small publishing house, and I teach English literature optional at Unacademy. A little something from Unacademy about their new upcoming batches for 2021, 2022, and 2023 aspirants. They are starting on the 1st of February. And they are at a discounted rate at the moment. That's why I need to break the news to my students or any UPSC aspirant who watch my videos. There is a complete 1 year GS batch for UPSC CSE. It starts on the 1st of February. The batches are in English and bilingual batches. Top educators are teaching at an academy now, including Mr. Manal, the top economics teacher in the country. There is a 2 year batch as well, 2 year GS batch, again bilingual and in English only. So if you're preparing for 23, the 2 year batch will help you if you're preparing for 21, 22. Then there is an NCERT batch that covers only the syllabus of NCERT. So complete NCERT syllabus, live classes by top educators. There is a test series, study material, PDFs, doubt sessions. I teach, so I know the doubt sessions are very good. And the expert batches as in we have the expert of different syllabus, the current affairs, the history, geography. And in these batches for 2021, this is for 2021, there are weekly answer writing practices for GS and covering all the four papers, and current affairs with PIB, Yojana, and Kurukshetra, etc., different magazines. So fantastic. If you're short of time, if you're a working aspirant, then you can also get weekend batches for the 2021 preparation. This one starting on the 6th of February. Weekend classes. Get your subscription before the fees increases. The fees is going to increase. That's the inside news I can give you. You can apply my code Harsh.Bhardwaj to get 10% off from the fees. So I think that is it. Let's move on to the paper. This is the first paper, paper one of 2020. I have been doing analysis for last many years of papers. So what I can do here is I can tell you the difference between this paper and the previous year paper and what you can expect in the next year's paper. Format of question is still the same. Out of 8 questions, you have to do five, and this is pretty straightforward. The 5 questions that you have to do, they are a combination of what you can one compulsory from each section and then the 3 questions from the remaining questions, but you have to do at least one question from each section apart from the compulsory question, right? Let's dig into the paper. The first question is the compulsory question, the 50 marker. Normally what happens in this short note first question is that they try to cover as much of secondary topics as they can, and this is what's happening here. All the secondary topics, most of the secondary topics are covered here. And according to my prediction, all these 5 short notes are literary age related. So they test your knowledge of all the literary ages in paper one. So as you can see, the first one is the Jacobean drama. The second one is the English novel in the 18th century. Again, it's a secondary topic. Then neoclassics, classical poetry, and romantic poetry, and then the Victorian society and thought. So nothing changed from what happens every year. So there isn't much to predict in these five short notes. They are very straightforward, very simple. The only thing that I have actually the couple of things I have picked in these short notes is they have never asked about the Jacobean drama alone. They always club Elizabethan and Jacobean drama together. This time they've clubbed it together. So they haven't clubbed it together. So they're only asking you about Jacobean drama. The second point is the fourth question, the D part, where they say the precursors of romantic poetry. That makes it a little complicated. So you need to think about what to write there. The rest is quite straightforward. Moving on to the second question. This first part of the second question, 9 out of 10 times, is from King Lear. And this theme of power in King Lear is again a copycat, straightforward question. No surprises here, and it's a 20 marker. So, a lot of marks to fetch this question. Second one is from Paradise Lost. Which elements of the epic form does Milton include in Paradise Lost to align it with epics from earlier eras? Right? This might sound like a little complicated, but what it all is asking you is to prove Paradise Lost as an epic. Find the epic elements in Paradise Lost. Right? It's a very straightforward university style question. They've just played with the language a little, asking you to compare it with earlier eras. So you can try and compare it with Homer and Iliad's epics, but it's a straightforward question. Third one, critically evaluate Pope's The Rape of the Lock as a social satire. Again, I think it's a very university kind of question and cannot be simpler. When we read Rape of the Lock, we this is the first thing we do. We study Rape of the Lock as a social satire. Moving on to the next one, question number three. Account for the contemporary relevance of Wordsworth's poetry with special reference to the prescribed poems. Contemporary relevance of Wordsworth's poetry. Now, that can be a little confusing because by contemporary, do they mean contemporary to Wordsworth or contemporary to us? That's the only thinking point in this question. I would say it is contemporary to Wordsworth. But if you want to take the argument and prove how Wordsworth poetry is relevant to us in our contemporary times, you can do that as well. Second one is a straightforward John Donne question about metaphysical conceits. And again, a play of language. The metaphysical conceit helps John Donne in fusing both profane and divine love into one great whole. Quite straightforward. When we prepare John Donne, we prepare as much as we can about metaphysical conceits. And I think the one poem that comes straight to my mind about this question is canonization. Other poems, relic, and other poems can also come in handy. So it is something that every student prepares. Third one, Paradise Lost again. In Paradise Lost, how does Milton succeed in making Satan a sympathetic character while at the same time condemning his actions? Now, this question has come previously where they ask you whether Milton is of devil's party without knowing it. People have accused Milton of sympathizing with Satan. But what this question adds is that they're asking you whether he also condemns his actions. Where he sympathizes with Satan, but at the same time he's condemning his actions. So you have to go back to what Milton says in the first stanza of Paradise Lost, that the poem is written to justify the ways of God to men. Right? So it's not a difficult question. So even this question number three is a scoring question. You can do it. Moving on to the next one, question four. How does Ibsen externalize inner problems by using effective symbols in a doll's house? Give a reasoned answer. This is a new question. This is they never asked something like this with doll's house. But when I teach this text or any text in the syllabus, I focus on two areas. One, the form, and two, the content. So form is all about the structure and the stylistics, the technicalities of the text. This is where the symbolism, metaphors, figure of speeches, narrative techniques, all that come in. and the content is about thematic assessment. So they've never asked a stylistics question on Doll's House. I might be wrong, they might have asked long time back, but recently they always asked for a thematic assessment of a Doll's House. So this is a good question. All they're asking you is what kind of symbols you find in a doll's house, starting with the title, that symbols that externalize inner problems. Okay, so it's a good question to do. Second one, again, it is again a stylistics question. How do images of darkness and light work throughout Tennyson's In Memoriam to represent grief, death, knowledge, and life? How are they developed by the poet throughout the poem? Now, I would say this question is a little complicated because one, it's 20 marker, and second, I know it for a fact that most students preparing for English literature optional, they do not prepare for Tennyson because it's too long. So a lot of students leave In Memoriam out. The best they do is they prepare a couple of questions about Tennyson's treatment of nature or Tennyson's relationship with nature and God and all that. So this question requires a thorough reading of In Memoriam because you'll have to track how he uses these images of darkness and light throughout the poem, and it happens throughout. You cannot just find certain cantos and figure out. So unless you haven't prepared this, you won't be able to do it, and that's little I don't know. I mean, little sad because the other two questions in this question, the A and the C part, they are easy. They should be scoring. For example, the Tempest one, the next one, an allegory of European discovery and colonization. The Tempest, the post-colonial assessment of Tempest, everyone should prepare because every other year they've been asking this. Moving on to the section B, the unseen passage. Okay, so this is, I haven't checked up on Google which poem it is, and you don't need to identify this poem. So when you're doing an unseen poem, like in this in the syllabus, you shouldn't worry about whether you can identify the poet or the poem. Of course, it helps if you know the poem and if you can identify it, but you won't get extra marks if you tell the examiner that you know the poem. What matters is how do you answer these five questions. And if you have some understanding of, let's say, the literary era of the poem, you can try to figure out what kind of symbolism or what kind of ideology the poem might be talking about. That really doesn't matter. It's an unseen poem, so you have to look at it like an unseen poem. The questions are straightforward questions. Okay, I won't spend much time in this. If you've done the poetry part of your syllabus well, this is a piece of cake. Out of these two compulsory questions, 50 plus 50, you should be hoping to get, out of 100 questions, you should be hoping to get at least 60. At least 60 if you prepare the syllabus decently enough. And you can definitely get to 70, 72, 74 marks. But 60 is like money on the table for you to take it. Moving on to the next question. This now we are into the prose section. Question number 6. Tom Jones is the story of the protagonist's journey from innocence via experience to wisdom. Now, when we read Tom Jones, there is a primary concept that we prepare, and that concept of Tom Jones being a buildings Roman text. Buildings Roman text. So when we understand what a buildings Roman text is, this is what we try to understand a protagonist's journey from innocence to wisdom, right? So again, I wouldn't say this is anything surprising. It's a very conceptual, straightforward question. Next one, how does Swift address the ancients versus moderns controversy in Clear's Travels? This is a question straight from university guidebooks. I'm surprised they have asked a question which you can find and in any guidebook in the country, any university syllabus guidebook. So it's a little surprising for me that UPSC has had to go through the university syllabus to come up with questions this time. Third one, Pride and Prejudice opens up with ironic narrative voice, and it is the one the reader hears throughout the novel. What kind of a silly question is this? When we study Jane Austen, irony is the first thing we try to understand. How everything in the text is ironic, how the tone of Major characters, be it Elizabeth Bennet or Darcy, the tone is ironic, and Jane Austen's narrative voice is ironic. So it's as simple as it can be, and it's again one of the first questions you'll find in the university textbooks about Jane Austen. I'm a little disappointed with this question. Question number 7. Comment on the significance of the epigraph in their death. They were not divided. How does George Eliot portray the relationship of the siblings in the Mill on the Floss? This is a good question. When I read George Eliot, Mill on the Floss, when I teach it, I start from the very last page of the text. Yes, in my lessons, I start with the very last page where the flood has happened and siblings, Maggie and the brother Tom, they're dying and they're hugging each other. It almost looks like an incestuous hug. But and I want to probe more about their relationship. And then we go back and then we try to find out more about their relationship. And this question asks you that major concept, which has never been asked before. Not like this, not directly like this. Good question for being innovative, being the first. Next one, Hard Times is built on the opposition between fact and fancy. Again, I'm disappointed. This is again a university guidebook question, and I think it has been asked many times before in exactly the same kind of wording. Next one, what attitudes to marriage can be discerned in Jane Austen's account of Mr. and Mrs. Bennet, Charlotte Lucas, and Mr. Collins, Lydia Bennet, and Mr. Wickham in Pride and Prejudice? This is good question because I remember asking my students to do a parallel between Charlotte Lucas, Lydia Bennet, and Elizabeth Bennet's character. Three major female characters, and the approach they have towards marriage and life is entirely different. Nobody has ever talked about Charlotte Lucas, right? So I think it's an important question. It's an innovative question. It tests your knowledge of the characters. This is a UPSC kind of question. So this question number 7, part A and part C, fantastic. Part B, I think this is what UPSC does. They throw a couple of good questions and then one easier ones so that you're not out of your ground. Next one, the last question. A sound heart is a surer guide than an ill-trained conscience. How far is this comment applicable in the context of the adventures of Huckleberry Finn? This is a Mark Twain comment, and with this he wrote this text, and he wanted the readers have a sound heart. He expected the human civilization or the human characters to rely upon their sound heart rather than the politics of the society. Right? So he expected the character of Huck to judge the character of Jim with a sound heart rather than an ill-trained conscience, ill-trained by the society of the times. With that expectation, he wrote this text and he created the character of Huckleberry Finn. So, good question to do. Nice. Then next one is again straight from the university. So both the hard times questions are very much copy paste canned questions. It has been asked before. It's a university kind of question. And if you're wondering what I have against university kind of questions is because I don't think UPSC needs to ask BA and MA syllabus kind of questions because this paper is open to everyone. There are a lot of engineers, a lot of my students who are engineers, a lot of engineers, a lot of people from other backgrounds who attempt this question. And if you only want to ask what the BA and the MA students are used to answering, then they need to sort out their acts. I'm a little disappointed by all these questions, but I think this is UPSC's way of watering down. If all the questions were difficult questions and innovative and original questions, then it's going to be a little harder for everyone else. So I can understand where they're coming from, but I don't appreciate it much. Last question is again a good question. Hardy subtitle Tess of the D'Urbervilles as a pure woman faithfully presented to express his rejection of the conventional heroine of Victorian fiction. Substantiate your answer with reference to the novel. It requires a thorough understanding of the thematic assessment of Tess. So, very good question to do. So, this question number 8 is a little tricky. Right? I don't think a lot of students would do, but this part B of this question makes it tempting, just like they did with the question number 7. The part B is tempting because it is something everyone prepares. But I think that's why they club in an easier question, a straightforward, expected question with the two innovative and original questions. They want to do it's like a carrot. They're dangling a carrot for you to pick. So, guys, I think it's a pretty good paper, not difficult. I would say it's a little original than last year's papers, and I expect this trend to continue. I would say it's a very balanced paper. I've given you many examples of questions which are very much predictable and very copy paste straight from guidebooks. Then and there are a lot of questions which are original, but staying within the concepts of the text. Nothing is something that I didn't expect as a teacher, and you should not expect as a student. So, good paper to do is 300 possible, 150 scoring 150 possible in this paper. Very much so, because there is a lot of scope to write good answers. They're giving you a lot of scope to write great answers if you have it in you, right? A lot of scope for original opinion. So good luck anyone who's attempted this paper and anyone who's preparing for 2021. You have to check out my batch that's starting on the 2nd of February. I'm starting with paper 1 for 2021 aspirants and 2022 Unacademy. My name is Harshit Bhardwaj. You can go on Unacademy and check out my courses. I look forward to seeing you in my classes if you need help with this. So you stay classy where you are and best of luck with your preparation. Thanks and see you later.